Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the AEW Full Gear review. And Full Gear last night was from the Daily's Place in Jacksonville, Florida. And this was the last AEW pay-per-view of this year. They will be back with another pay-per-view in February, of course, Revolution. And Full Gear last night, this show was fucking amazing. This show was awesome. It was a good show from beginning to end. And I gotta say, it was a lot better than All Out. And like I said, the show was great from beginning to end. You had on the buy-in, Serena Debb ended up taking on Allysin Kay, where the NWA Women's World Championship was on the line. We had Kenny Omega versus Hangman Adam Page in the AEW World Championship Eliminator tournament, the final match. The winner gets to face Moxley later on for a future AEW World Championship match. We saw Orange Cassidy versus John Silver. Darby Allin versus Cody Rhodes with a TNT Championship was on the line. Hikaru Shida versus Nyla Rose, where the AEW Women's World Championship was on the line. We saw the Young Bucks versus FTR for the World Tag Team Championship, which a lot of us fans were looking forward to this match. This was a dream match for fans to see. And I remember, saying, oh, yeah, it's going to be a Match of the Year candidate. Was it Match of the Year candidate? I will get to that. We also saw Matt Hardy versus Sammy Guevara in the Elite Deletion match. MJF versus Chris Jericho. And the main event, which was the I Quit match. Jon Moxley versus Eddie Kingston for the AEW World Championship. Overall, like I said, this show was amazing. This show was awesome. Full Gear. Enjoyed every bit of it. So let's get started into the Full Gear review. So we'll start with the match that was on the buy-in. It was like their pre-show. And it was Serena Debb versus Allysin Kay for the NWA Women's World Championship. And this was a pretty solid women's match. Serena Debb is the new NWA Women's World Champion. She ended up defeating Thunder Rosa a few weeks ago. And like I said, this was a solid women's match between Serena Debb and Allysin Kay. The match was Allysin Kay's AEW debut. And of course, she was a free agent. So the match got underway with Allysin Kay going for a cover on Serena Debb. She remained in control of the match, ended up doing a shoulder tackle to Serena Debb, and Serena Debb ended up coming back. She was working over Allysin Kay's knee. Kay ended up getting to the bottom rope for the break, and there was back and forth slaps to both Serena Debb and Allysin Kay. And at the end of the match, you had Serena Debb end up locking in the Serenity Lock on Kay. Kay ended up tapping out. So there you go. Serena Debb ended up winning the match, retaining the NWA Women's World Championship. Post-match, you had Thunder Rosa. Thunder Rosa, the former NWA Women's World Champion, came out. It was always cool. It's always cool to see Thunder Rosa. Very talented in the ring. So Thunder Rosa got into the ring. Serena Debb ended up holding up the NWA Women's World Championship. And we saw Thunder Rosa and Serena Debb bickering back and forth. Thunder Rosa then ended up pointing to the title and ended up heading to the back. So it looks like we might possibly see a rematch between Thunder Rosa and Serena Debb, where the NWA Women's World Championship will be on the line. So hopefully that's on Dynamite. So that'll be hopefully coming up soon if they book it on an edition of Dynamite. Will be gladly to see that. But overall, it was a solid match between Serena Debb and Allysin Kay. And then we start Full Gear. We get into the regular matches on the card, which the Full Gear card was a pretty good card, fully stacked card. So Full Gear opened up, the pay-per-view opened up with Kenny Omega versus Hangman Adam Page. This was the final match in the AEW World Championship Eliminator Tournament. And the winner gets to have a future shot at the AEW World Championship. I know I said earlier that the winner will get to face Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship if Moxley is still the champion going into the new year, going into 2021. Which I know Moxley is probably going to still be the champion heading into the new year. I don't think that they're going to be taking the title off of Moxley anytime soon. So, but this was a very good match. This was the first best match of the night, in my opinion. Just Omega and Page gave it all they got in this match, and it delivered. And when the match started, we had Kenny Omega end up offering a handshake to Hangman Adam Page. Page did not shake Omega's hand. And on commentary, we had Don Callis. He was sitting there alongside, of course, Tony Schiavone, Jim Ross, and Excalibur. And he only called this match. And Don Callis is the EVP of Impact Wrestling, which not a huge fan of Impact Wrestling. Not a huge fan of it. But this match, Omega and Page, was the second meeting of the both of them, which the first time I heard that the both of them went face-to-face in a match was when both Omega and Page were in New Japan, from what I heard. So the match got underway. We had both Omega and Page delivering chops to each other. Omega looked to go for a V-trigger, but Page was able to drop Omega, sending him to the ramp. Omega then ended up looking to hit a move off the top, but Page ended up coming back and delivered a suplex, went for the cover. Omega ended up kicking out at 2. And there was a point here in the match where Page ended up throwing Omega into the barricade, and Page was looking to throw Omega into the barricade again, but Omega leapt on the barricade, and he hit a awesome looking moonsault on Page off of the barricade, which was cool. And there was another point in the match where they were on the ramp, and we had Page deliver a powerbomb to Kenny Omega on the stage, which you could hear the thud when that powerbomb was delivered. And they got back into the ring. Page ended up delivering another powerbomb to Omega in the ring. And at the end of the match, Kenny Omega ended up winning. We had Kenny Omega hit the one-winged angel on Page. And pretty much that was that. Kenny Omega ended up winning the match. He gets to earn a future shot at the AEW World Championship. there you go. If Moxley is still the champion going into the new year, we might see Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship on a future edition of Dynamite. So, or it could take place at Revolution, which is the next pay-per-view that in the new year. So they're probably going to drag it out until February, in my opinion. Until we hopefully get that match at Revolution. I know I am saying that way in advance. It's too early to tell. But that's my prediction. But overall, it was the first best match of the night. Omega and Page really delivered here. And it was just awesome from beginning to end. So you had post-match, you had Omega end up checking on Page. And Page ended up looking, really dejected after the match. And then we had Orange Cassidy versus John Silver of the Dark Order. And surprisingly, this was a decent match here. We had the match start with John Silver ends up flexing to Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy ended up putting his hands in his pocket. And Cassidy ended up tripping Silver up. And he gave Silver a weak thumbs up, and then he had his hands back in his pocket. He did the little kicks, the kicks that Orange Cassidy does, where the crowd ends up going, oh, oh, oh. So we had Silver end up dropping Orange Cassidy, pulled his hands out of his pockets, and then Silver ends up ripping out the pockets. He ends up ripping the pockets off of Orange Cassidy's pants. So then John Silver then ended up launching Orange Cassidy across the ring. He was flexing some more. Cassidy ended up looking to go for a Hurricanrana, which John Silver ended up blocking it and reversed it into a suplex. And we had Cassidy end up getting back up later on in the match. He ended up hitting a Hurricanrana and a Michinoku driver to John Silver. Silver ended up kicking out at 2. And at the end of the match, you had Cassidy end up hitting the Orange Punch. And then the Beach Break to Silver. And he went for the cover. There you go. Orange Cassidy ended up winning the match. Post-match, you had the Best Friends, Chucky T and Trent, end up coming out. They end up celebrating with their buddy Orange Cassidy. And they do the hug. And the camera ends up zooming back, which I love when they do that. I love when the Best Friends hug, and then then the camera goes back. So it's just good camera work there whenever they do it. So, overall, it was a decent match between Cassidy and John Silver. And then we move on to Cody versus Darby Allin. The TNT Championship on the line. Very good match here. This was, in my opinion, the second best match of the night. Cody ended up getting, of course, his last name back, Rhodes, so now he's being called Cody Rhodes. And Darby Allin, always amazing in the ring whenever he gets in there. Darby Allin ended up entering Daly's place, and he was sitting on top of a car, and he ended up bashing the windshield with a skateboard before he headed to the ring. So Darby Allin was out on the floor. Cody ended up coming out along with his wife Brandy and Arn Anderson. Darby Allin was out on the floor with his back to Cody when Cody ended up coming out. So Now Mike Chioda is the referee here in the match, and Justin Roberts end up announcing, Cody Rhodes, because Cody now has the rights to the name now, since WWE end up giving it up. So Cody's being back to being called Cody Rhodes, which I am glad, now that he got the Rhodes name back. So the match got underway with Cody ended up using his strength to taunt Darby Allin. He lifted and slammed Darby Allin down to the mat. Darby Allin then ended up slapping Cody in the back of the head, which led to Cody heading out to the floor for a break to talk with Arn Anderson. And Darby Allin ended up sending Cody back out to the floor. And Cody ended up covering Darby Allin. Darby Allin ended up flipping back into the ring. And then he hit a flying suicide dive to Cody's back. Cody then ended up delivering a hammerlock position, which when they were both back in the ring, and sent Darby Allin hard out onto the ramp. And you had Cody ended up beating up Darby Allin. He was working on Darby Allin's arm. Darby Allin ended up looking to go for a top rope springboard arm drag, which Cody ended up blocking. And Cody went back to work on Darby's arm. Darby was able to get his foot to the bottom rope. And Cody was showing off doing push-ups. Arn Anderson wasn't happy about that. And he was just screaming at Cody to beat Darby Allin. And there was a point where Darby Allin was put on the top turnbuckle, and Cody was looking to go for a arm breaker, and Cody ended up going up top, and he delivered a moonsault, which Darby Allin ended up moving out of the way. Darby Allin ended up delivering a coffin drop, which he got caught, and Cody ended up delivering a super kick to Darby Allin, and he was looking to go for the crossroads. Darby Allin ended up getting to the corner, and it showed Darby Allin ripping off the turnbuckle pad, the middle turnbuckle pad, which Cody then got sent ribs first into the exposed middle turnbuckle. So then we saw Cody and Darby Allin. They were up on top. Cody then ended up delivering a crossroads off the top, a super crossroads off the top, which looked awesome, which looked amazing. Cody went for the cover. Darby Allin was able to get his arm under the bottom rope to break it up, and Cody couldn't believe it. Cody was shocked that Darby Allin ended up getting his arm under the bottom rope, and Arn Anderson wasn't happy with that either. So Darby Allin ended up going to climb up. He ended up jumping on Cody's back, and he ended up applying a sleeper hold. And Cody ended up going up to the top with Darby Allin on his back. And we had Darby Allin end up rolling to the floor. And at the end of the match, you had Darby Allin and Cody. They were doing pins. And there was the last pin that Darby Allin got. He finally got a pin on Cody, which was a shock. So Darby Allin, with that, he won the match. He wins the TNT Championship. And, it was a good match. So I'm really happy for Darby Allin. He's the TNT Champion. I predicted when they announced this TNT Championship, when whoever could get crowned the first ever TNT Champion, I thought it was going to be Darby Allin. But we all know that it went to Cody. Cody was the first TNT Champion. I said hopefully it was Darby Allin. But finally, Darby Allin is the TNT Champion. So I predicted, a little late when they bought in the TNT Championship. I thought Darby Allin was going to be the first ever guy to win the TNT Championship, but it came, months later. Came a couple of months later. So, but really happy. Darby Allin deserves that TNT Championship, and hopefully they give him a long reign as a TNT champion. So, but post-match, Cody ended up going right over to the referee, to Mike Chioda, and he ends up taking the title. And we also saw he looks over at Arn Anderson. Cody then ended up kneeling down, which I thought this was awesome. He kneeled down and he handed Darby Allin the TNT Championship. And I thought that was a nice way of passing on the title to Darby Allin. It was like Cody was like, probably in his mind, he was like, "You deserved it, kid. You really deserved it." So Darby Allin ended up taking the TNT Championship. He got on the second rope and he held it up, and it was an awesome moment. Awesome moment for Darby Allin. Cody ended up putting the title over Darby Allin's shoulder, and he raised his arm up. So it was like passing the torch. It went from Cody, and then it went to Brody Lee, then it went from Brody Lee back to Cody, and then from Cody now over to Darby Allin. So it was awesome. And then we hear Taz was on the mic. Taz ended up coming out to the stage. He was yelling, "Enough! Enough!" And he tells Cody and Darby Allin to hit the bricks. And we had Brian Cage and Ricky Starks attack Cody and Darby Allin from behind. They end up laying out both Cody and Darby. Cage and Starks end up picking up the TNT Championship. They both picked up the TNT Championship, and they stared at it for a little bit. Taz ended up jumping in, and he takes the TNT Championship. He then gave direction to Brian Cage, and he was looking to finish off Darby Allin. Brian Cage was looking to finish off Darby Allin. Cody ended up jumping in to help out Darby Allin. Starks and Cage end up getting rid of Cody. Darby Allin was then thrown into a set piece. So Darby Allin was then brought over to the car that he arrived in. So we had Starks and Cage look to break Darby Allin's arm in the car door. But eventually, Will Hobbs end up showing up. Will Hobbs end up charging at Ricky Starks and Brian Cage with the chair. He had a chair in hand, and he ended up chasing Taz, Ricky Starks, and Brian Cage away. So that was that. So Taz has been calling out Will Hobbs, saying, "Oh, when is Will Hobbs going to join his Taz team? When's Will Hobbs going to join him and Brian Cage and Ricky Starks?" So, but we'll probably see, what happens on Dynamite this Wednesday with them. If Will Hobbs shows up on Dynamite Wednesday. But overall, very good match from Darby Allin and Cody. Darby Allin, new TNT champion, rightfully deserved. And like I said, the whole moment where Cody ends up kneeling, hands Darby Allin the TNT championship, I thought that was an awesome moment. So, and it was well done. So, and then we went backstage. We saw the Natural Nightmares end up talking with Dasha. QT Marshall then ends up talking about Allie, who of course went back to the Bunny. She's now back with the Butcher and the Blade. Allie was with QT Marshall before AEW put her back with the Butcher and the Blade. So QT Marshall was talking about Allie trying to infiltrate their group, and that she was using him. Allie was using QT Marshall for his money. So Dustin Rhodes then ended up announcing that he wants a bunkhouse match against the Butcher and the Blade on Dynamite this Wednesday. So we're going to be seeing that Wednesday night, bunkhouse match, Butcher and the Blade versus QT Marshall, Dustin Rhodes. That should be a pretty entertaining match. And they also announced 2 matches that we're going to see on Dynamite Wednesday. We're going to be seeing Rey Fenix versus Penta El Zia Miedo 2. This is their rematch. And that's going to be an awesome match. And we're also going to be seeing Tay Conti versus Red Velvet. So, women's match. So, we're going to be seeing that on Dynamite Wednesday. So then we had Hikaru Shida versus Nyla Rose, where the AEW Women's World Championship was on the line. And I know a lot of people said that this match wasn't that great. To me, it was a solid match, in my opinion. It wasn't the best match, but it wasn't terrible. But we had Nyla Rose coming out alongside Vicky Guerrero. And the match got underway with Hikaru Shida delivering some drop kicks to Nyla Rose, delivered a running knee strike. Hikaru Shida then threw Nyla Rose into the ring apron, which she ended up delivering a kick to the back of Nyla Rose's knee. We had Hikaru Shida then end up hitting a running knee strike, which she ended up throwing Nyla Rose into the barricade. Hikaru Shida then pulled out a chair and set it up on the floor. And Nyla Rose was looking for, a chair of her own, I guess, to deliver to Hikaru Shida, but Aubrey Edwards was telling her, no way. So then the referee ended up going to check on Nyla Rose, which Shida ended up delivering a knee strike off the chair, which sent Nyla Rose through the barricade. Because of that, Aubrey Edwards ended up having to go check on Nyla Rose. And then Vicky Guerrero gets involved in the match. Vicky ended up hitting Hikaru Shida in the back of the knee with the kendo stick. So the knee of Hikaru Shida played a factor into this match for Nyla Rose. So Nyla Rose ended up wrapping Hikaru Shida's knee around the ring, around the steel ring frame. And she then wrapped Hikaru Shida's leg around the ring post. Nyla Rose then ended up delivering a chop block to Shida. So, like I said, Nyla Rose was working on the injured knee of Hikaru Shida. At the end of the match, Hikaru Shida ended up throwing a running knee to Nyla Rose. So Hikaru Shida ended up winning the match because Shida was delivering multiple knees to the face to Nyla Rose. So Hikaru Shida ended up winning the match. And I forgot to mention there was also a point where Vicky got involved again, which Vicky was looking to go for a kendo stick shot to Hikaru Shida, but Aubrey Edwards ended up snatching the kendo stick out of Vicky Guerrero's hand, which Nyla Rose then ended up getting sent into Vicky Guerrero. Vicky went down. Hikaru Shida ended up throwing Nyla Rose into the side of the stage and then into the barricade. And, that was that. Hikaru Shida ended up winning. Hikaru Shida retains the AEW Women's World Championship. Post-match, you had Vicky in the ring, and she was pissed off and screaming at Nyla Rose. She then ended up slapping Nyla Rose. So Vicky ended up heading to the back, and that was that. But this might be setting up a possible babyface turn for Nyla Rose. I think Nyla Rose is going to break away from Vicky Guerrero. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, that's my prediction. I can sense them making Nyla Rose a babyface. But we'll see where this goes. And then we have the dream match that fans have been waiting for. And this is a match that I was waiting for. I was waiting to see these guys get in the ring and have a match. And I was saying, oh, this is going to be match of the year candidate. And it was FTR versus the Young Bucks. The AEW World Tag Team Championships were on the line. Tully Blanchard was banned from ringside. And this was a great match here. But was it match of the year candidate as I was saying that it would be? No, in my opinion. In my mind, I was overhyping this. I mean, don't get me wrong. This was a great match. This was a great match from beginning to end. The wrestling here from both FTR and the Young Bucks were great. But I overhyped it a little too much, saying that, oh, this is going to be a perfect match. This is going to be one of the best matches of all time. This is going to be match of the year candidate. And it wasn't that for me. It wasn't up to par with the match of the year candidate for me. You know, like I said, I overhyped it a little too much. But this was a great match. So the match started off with Matt Jackson and Cash Wheeler in there. Wheeler ended up going for Matt Jackson's ankle, which on commentary, they noted that Matt Jackson's ankle is injured. So Wheeler ended up going for Matt's ankle, but Matt ended up shoving Wheeler away. Wheeler was got sent to the floor for a break. Then we had Dax Harwood and Nick end up coming into the match. It was back and forth between them. We had the Bucks deliver hurricanranas and drop kicks to FTR, classic style of the Young Bucks. So we had Matt was out on the floor to get Harwood. So Harwood ended up throwing a punch. Matt moves out of the way, and Harwood ends up punching the ring post and injuring his hand. So Harwood's hand was bleeding after that punch to the ring post, and he hit it hard. You know, you could hear the pound on the other ring post when Harwood ended up hitting it. So Harwood was then being checked out by a physician, a ringside physician, and he ended up getting his hand wrapped up. Wheeler then ended up throwing Matt's ankle into the barricade. So Harwood was able to continue the match. He got his hand taped up. Harwood was throwing some elbow drops and a headbutt. And at the end of the match, you had the Young Bucks win the match, where we had Wheeler end up going for a springboard 450, and Matt Jackson end up moving out of the way, and Matt then delivered a super kick to Wheeler, and he went for the cover, and there you go. The Young Bucks win the match and are the new AEW World Tag Team Champions. And if they did not win this match, if the Young Bucks did not win this match, I forgot to say, if they didn't win this match, they would never challenge for the AEW World Tag Team Championships again. Well, apparently, they end up winning the match and are the new AEW World Tag Team Champions. But this was an awesome match. This was a great match from beginning to end. Like I said, it wasn't Match of the Year candidate for me because I overhyped it that much. But post-match, you had Kenny Omega end up coming out, ends up hugging Matt and Nick. Hangman Adam Page also ended up coming out. Of course, he had a drink in his hand, and he watched on from the stage from the tunnel. And that was that. But it was an awesome moment. It was a great moment where Omega came out to hug, Matt and Nick. But great match. Great match. And the wrestling here from both FTR and the Young Bucks was great. And then we went to Sammy Guevara versus Matt Hardy in the Elite Deletion match. And this was a very fun match. I enjoyed the hell out of this. I know people will probably found it goofy. And it was filmed like, cinematic style here. But we heard the crowd react to it. So it started off with Sammy Guevara in a golf cart. Matt Hardy was on the phone, and he asked for some help if Sammy ends up not coming alone. So then we see Sammy end up driving into the Hardy compound in his golf cart. He sees Neo One watching him, and Neo One ends up putting a hologram of Matt Hardy, welcoming Sammy Guevara to his compound. So what was funny was Neo One then ended up shutting down the golf cart, so Sammy Guevara couldn't go anywhere with the golf cart. So then Matt Hardy shows up with the monster truck, and his monster truck ended up destroying the golf cart that Sammy was in, which was funny though. It was broken Matt Hardy here. I love broken Matt Hardy, just absolutely great. Delete. So Matt Hardy deleted the golf cart that Sammy was in. So broken Matt Hardy was looking for Sammy Guevara. He was sneaking around. Sammy Guevara ends up hitting Matt Hardy with the garbage can, and then a moonsault off the monster truck tire. Sammy ended up hitting Matt Hardy a few more times with the trash can. They made their way through the woods, and we had Private Party show up there, and we had Santana and Ortiz also show up. Santana and Ortiz end up throwing Hardy out to the floor. There was already a ring that was set up there in the woods. So there was a point where Sammy Guevara then ended up jamming Matt Hardy's face into a fountain. Guevara ended up hitting the enziguri to Matt Hardy. And that's when Ortiz and Santana end up showing up. So Hardy then ended up calling for assistance. Private Party, Isaiah Cassidy, Mark Gwen end up coming out in a nearby car. So Santa and Ortiz end up dropping Matt Hardy. Private Party already made it to the compound. And there was a point where Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara were chasing each other with fireworks that was going off. And then we hear, this guy in like a disguised voice, like, I wouldn't do that if I were you, Mac. So Hardy ended up planting Sammy to the ground, and he was going to throw Sammy into the lake. So this guy with the disguised voice shows up with the hurricane. Yes, the hurricane. Stand in the back. There's a hurricane coming through. Or, what's up with that? Yeah, that hurricane. Hurricane Helms. So, this masked guy shows up with the hurricane. And it's revealed to be Gangrel. Yes, Gangrel was there. He was there with the hurricane. Gangrel ended up saying that he mentored Sammy Guevara and would choose him over time, over Matt Hardy. So when Private Party ended up showing up to help out, Hurricane then ended up asking Matt Hardy why it took so long. Matt Hardy ended up saying, sorry, long-term storytelling. And then we hear classic Hurricane go, what's up with that? So then Sammy ended up getting involved, throws Hurricane into the Lake of Reincarnation. And then we see it's Shane Helms shows back up and asked Sammy Guevara a question. He then got thrown back into the lake, and then the Hurricane ended up returning again to help out. So, but it went on for a while. Sammy Guevara and Matt Hardy were in this dilapidated place, like a garage, and Sammy Guevara was busted open. His head was busted open. Matt Hardy had a chair in hand, and Matt Hardy delivered a chair shot to Sammy Guevara's face, and we had Guevara's face planted into the concrete. And that's when Matt Hardy ended up hitting Sammy Guevara with the chair, and Sammy was like passed out. So Matt ended up saying that Sammy made him what he is. So that's when Matt Hardy ended up smashing the back of Sammy Guevara's head with the chair. And it was very brutal to see. But Matt Hardy went for the cover. And there you go. Matt Hardy ended up winning the Elite Deletion match. Post-match, Matt Hardy ended up saying that this is over. So he ended up telling Neo One to open the door, calling in Private Party. Matt ended up asking Private Party to take out the trash. They ended up picking up Sammy and put him in the trash can. And they put him in the back of the truck. And we saw Matt's father-in-law drive away. Of course, we see Matt Hardy's wife, Rebby, ends up playing the piano. And Matt Hardy and, of course, Private Party end up celebrating. Fireworks were going off behind them. And that was that. But a very fun match. Very fun Ultimate Deletion match. Seeing the Hurricane, Shane Helms, and Gangrel was cool. And that brutal shot that Matt Hardy delivered to Sammy Guevara with the chair to the back of Guevara's head was brutal to see. But I enjoyed it. It was very fun. It was a fun match. And then we had MJF versus Chris Jericho. If MJF end up winning this match, he will be in the Inner Circle. But this was a good match here. And before the match got underway, the lights went out in the Daily's place, and we saw a jacket start to light up. Thinking that it's Jericho, thinking that we all thought Jericho would bring back the light up jacket, whenever he came out, which was awesome when he used to come out with the lighted jacket. I used to love that. But it was actually MJF. So MJF ended up trolling everybody, thinking that it was Jericho bringing back his light up jacket. So MJF didn't like what was going on because the crowd was chanting, "Thank you, Jericho." So MJF didn't like it that much. He went up on the turnbuckle, got booed. So MJF was looking to go for a handshake because Jericho was already out there. Jericho ended up slapping MJF in the face, and the match got underway. Jericho ended up running over MJF, delivered a back suplex and a pin. Jericho was sent out to the floor, and it was back and forth between MJF and Jericho here. We had, at one point, Jericho, I think, ended up taking the camera, ended up flipping MJF off, which was funny. So Jericho ended up trying to do the Judas effect, but he missed, and he hit the ring post. At the end of the match, MJF ended up getting the win because MJF ended up calling for Wardlow to come out. Wardlow ended up getting the ring. The referee was checking on Jericho. Orbier was checking on Jericho. MJF ended up swinging, and he missed. And Wardlow was distracting Aubrey Edwards. Hager appeared and threw the bat to Jericho, threw Floyd to Jericho. MJF ended up falling to the mat like he got hit. He pulled the Eddie Guerrero. Aubrey Edwards ended up turning around. She ends up seeing Jericho with Floyd, his bat. He ended up dropping it. Ended up saying that he did nothing. So MJF ended up making the roll-up, got a handful of tights on Jericho, and ended up getting the pin. So MJF ended up winning the match. Post-match, MJF ended up putting his hand out. Jericho ended up shaking it, and he was smiling like he loved it. So Jericho was smiling, gave MJF a hug, and Wardlow was also there. Wardlow's also in the group. He's also along with the Inner Circle. So Jericho ended up welcoming MJF and Wardlow into the Inner Circle. And Hager and Wardlow were just staring at each other. And Hager didn't look too happy about that. And now, since MJF and Wardlow are part of the Inner Circle, how is Sammy Guevara going to feel with that? But overall, good match from Jericho and MJF. So then we went backstage. We had Orange Cassidy, Trent, and Chucky T. They're dealing with Miro and Kip Sabian. And they want an apology. Kip Sabian and Miro want an apology for what happened previously. Orange Cassidy then ended up getting slapped in the face. And then Cassidy ended up keeping his cool. And he went along with Trent and Chucky T. So, and that was that. And then it was the main event. Moxley versus Eddie Kingston. I Quit match for the AEW World Championship. Very good main event. This match was awesome. It was hardcore, bloody from Moxley. So, match started with Moxley doing a ankle pick on Eddie Kingston. Kingston ended up biting Moxley's ear. And can we just say, what was up with Eddie Kingston's attire that he was wearing for this match? He looked like he should be part of the Spirit Squad. Yeah, remember the Spirit Squad? But we ended up seeing both Moxley and Kingston back up on their feet. They were trading chops. As you know, Moxley was giving chops to Eddie Kingston. Eddie Kingston was like loving it. He was like, ah, you know, like that, which was funny. So they ended up brawling on the floor. Moxley ended up launching a chair at Kingston's face, then threw him into the barricade. Moxley then tried to break Kingston's fingers. Kingston ended up getting suplexed on the concrete, which was brutal. Moxley was bleeding a bit, which he was bleeding near his eye. So Moxley ended up pulling out a barbed wire wrapped bat. smacked Kingston a few times with the barbed wire bat. Kingston was now bleeding from his mouth. Moxley ended up jabbing the bat into his forehead. He was like, I don't want to do it. So Moxley ended up yelling at the referee, asking Kingston if he'll quit. So Moxley ended up taking a suplex, and Kingston ended up launching a chair into Moxley's face. Kingston was smacking Moxley with the back of the chair. Also, thumbtacks was used here for the match. Kingston ended up delivering a Uranagi to Moxley, which Moxley went onto the tacks. So at the end of the match, Kingston ended up flipping Moxley off, and Moxley ended up delivering the Bulldog choke to Eddie Kingston with a piece of the barbed wire around Eddie Kingston's neck. So Bulldog choke with the barbed wire around Eddie Kingston's neck, which the face that Eddie Kingston made looked crazy. But Kingston ended up quitting, and because of that, Moxley ended up winning the match, retaining the AEW World Championship. Post-match, Moxley ended up helping Eddie Kingston up. Kingston wanted nothing of it. Moxley ended up trying to talk with Kingston. So Kingston was just shaking his head at Moxley, and he stumbled to the back. So Kenny Omega then ended up heading out, ended up smiling at Moxley, and Omega didn't get in the ring, and he ended up heading to the back. He had like a little few words to Moxley, and that was that. That was how Full Gear went off the air. But very brutal match. Really enjoyed this match from beginning to end. Good main event. And the wrestling here from Moxley and Kingston, it was awesome. So, but Full Gear, this was one of the best pay-per-views of the year. And this was a lot better than All Out, in my opinion. And as for the FTR Young Bucks match, I said that I hope it was the main event, but after seeing Moxley and Eddie Kingston, I'm glad that Moxley and Kingston main evented the show. But anyways, that's it for Full Gear, for the Full Gear review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all tomorrow night with of course, Monday Night Raw review, which predicting it's going to be another shitty show. So there you go. Stay tuned for that tomorrow. So until then, see you all tomorrow night with Monday Night Raw. Whether it be a review or a recap and results video. Who knows? But it's going to be possibly another shitty show anyways. It's Monday Night Raw. What do you expect? So, until then, see you all tomorrow night.